So, good afternoon, and I am Helen Emery, the whole Life Discipleship Officer for Lichfield Diocese. And I think this session on enabling small groups for all really is around us understanding the language, understanding each other. And so I thought I would start with a few definitions of discipleship and small groups. This is a list of things that you wanted from this session, so I'm really hoping that that's what we will aim to achieve, that we get some insights, some strategies, understanding of all of those things that you've asked for. So thank you for completing that when you signed up. But yeah, if we start with this term discipleship, it is something that is often, there is a difference, put it this way, across the different spectrum of our diocese. We have a whole range of different traditions and expressions. And so I think sometimes even that word discipleship can land very differently in different contexts. So what my understanding is might not be the same as yours, but I've just put there on the screen a few of the common practices that I think we are talking about when we think about what we do for our discipleship, and also who we are. So that growth in Christian character, prayer, service of others, generosity, discerning, what our calling is, sharing our faith with others, engaging with the Bible, Sabbath, rest, fellowship, all of those things can happen within a small group context. And I would say, from what I've seen, really flourish in a small group context. So you might be more familiar with language such as everyday faith or living out the teachings of Jesus. It might be that when you think of whole life discipleship, think of all ages. So when we think of small groups, we're thinking of from cradle to grave, intergenerational. We're thinking of all stages, people who are very new to faith, right through to people who, such as yourselves, who have been very well experienced in this. So whole life discipleship can also be that Saturday, Monday to Saturday experience, not just Sunday. So everything that we do in our sort of lived experience, whether that's your leisure time, your work time, your employment, or with your families, whatever we're doing, is the whole of our life where we aim to see all of these things have an impact. So I'm also thinking about this idea of breaking down the sacred and the secular. So the idea that we have this thing that is a small group and a church, and this is what we do here and then your everyday relationships and contacts. And I think it's quite healthy to maybe blur that, not to see sacred versus secular, but to blur into all of it. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking of when I think of discipleship. I would be very interested in anyone's take in the chat as I continue, what you would say was your sort of, focus for that phrase, whole life discipleship. But small groups, obviously part of my remit is around encouraging them, helping them flourish. It's very interesting that somebody at the start said that there has been a decline. The research that I've read expresses that nationally. I think since COVID, the traditional thing of connecting around your discipleship on a regular basis maybe has fallen away to an extent compared to pre-COVID. We could have a whole conversation about that, but when I say about small group, I want to say that in the widest sense. This is any time, any space, any capacity where people connect. And it could just be 3 or 4 people up to around 12. I like the idea we've kept that it's small group. I think any more than 12 people, you don't really, you cease to maybe become a small group. But we can take that emphasis from the earliest days when the Spirit fell on that collection of disciples around that number. We've never been able to do it on our own, have we? We've always been able to connect with others when we look to our faith and to grow. Led by the Spirit, our growth in our faith isn't something we do on our own. So the idea that we can create spaces where people can feel safe and they can build trust and be very open and reflective together. I see that as a crucial part of formation. And they're spaces where people can thrive through diversity, as of all ages, all stages, and all needs, all contexts, a huge range of expression. And I think that's the beautiful thing about the idea of small groups. So again, we could do a whole discussion about what we interpret small groups to be, but hopefully that's helping our thinking so far. Let's see.
So, what is accessibility? I've just got to do a double check that we're both on the screen. Just let me sorry, doing two things at once. So, what is accessibility? I think we all know that people are different, and the Bible even says that people are different. And I'm always coming back to 1 Corinthians 12, where we are part of a body, and without any part of the body, we are not a whole body. So we've just got to be aware of who's there and who's not. And there's many challenges that can happen. And I think the thing to be aware of is looking at who's here and who's not. Why aren't they here? What barriers do they face that we haven't even thought about, especially in small groups? It could be transport, it could be timing. There's many ways that our choices and what we think of as normal and what we this is how we've always done it, maybe excluding certain groups or certain people with certain differences. Enabling all, we think about the people, talking to people and making sure that we've made sure that we've talked to people. We think about the space that we provide and whether we need to change the space at all. And then we think about how we embed that knowledge. How do we make sure that this happens in a year's time and not just for tomorrow? So starting by who's here, who's not, just think about who is in your church and why aren't they coming. Can you start a conversation with them about why they don't like small groups? Or we're doing something on Tuesday. I just wondered if there's a reason that you can't come or you don't like coming. You can be completely honest with me. I'm absolutely fine with that. Love to hear what are the barriers that mean that you don't come. As I said, it can be things that we haven't even thought of. That's an unconscious bias, an unconscious expectation that we've put around it, which I think in church we can be we can easily fall into thinking that everyone reads, everyone's comfortable with reading or praying out loud. There can be cultural differences, like not going into people's homes, or that the home has got a step outside of it, or the toilet, you can't go to the toilet in the house. So it's worth sort of talking to people so that we can find out what's the challenge that different people are facing. Also, I think we started to talk about briefly or raise that we're bringing people into relationships that aren't often normally in relationship. Often that can be really exciting and we can find new friendships and new connections. But sometimes that can come with clashes. And especially when we're looking at difference, there can be a clash of difference. For instance, I am dyslexic and I prefer not having white on my page at all. I prefer lots of different colours, but not white. And I know that somebody maybe with a visual impairment may prefer a white background. Let's get us together and talk about what's the most important thing that happens. Who's the most important in this situation to have their expectations met? Or is there another way of doing it where we print something off and I use a folder? There's often a solution, but let's talk about it. So we put this into AI. Me and Helen had a really good conversation, and sometimes AI can be really useful. And it came up with this acronym, which we quite like, talking about access. So when we're thinking about small groups, there are many things that can be adaptable. You can adapt the format. So I go to an online group because I'm a single parent. I can't leave the house regularly in an evening without support. So online or hybrid. So you're in somebody's house or in the church, but also somebody can log in on Zoom and be hybrid. You could be flexible about the timings. People sometimes don't like going out at night or have challenges with nighttime vision. So do one during the day, or the opposite. Do one at a weekend when people aren't working. And think about the structure to suit the members. What would it be best to start with a bit of food or a nibble of something because people have come straight from work? But also remembering if we do food, making sure that we do the dietary requirements and checking that everybody is able to eat what we do or isn't going to get ill if we put food out. Also, we have a clear purpose. Why does the group exist? And what are the expectations of that group? What are we asking of the members? That can be stated at the beginning. We don't want everyone to pray. We don't need everyone to read out loud. You're very welcome to just be quiet during this meeting. You are welcome however you participate. A culture of belonging that we seek out to hear everybody's voice. As I said, that may not be in the group, but it might be separate to the group. And also being comfortable with getting it wrong and changing it if it doesn't work. Easy entry, that means that we don't get people to sign up before they commit. And I think in small groups you can feel especially when it's in somebody's house or there's a small group of people there, you feel very visible when you enter. So it's making that an easy transition as well. Being aware of shared leadership, we did mention before we started the video that there is often people that come and you can always hear their voices. So let's find some different ways of making sure that if people want to speak, they can speak. Also, let's look at the support structures so that there may be a WhatsApp group or there may be an email out to everybody who's attended the group, or just that the leader connects to people so that we can understand each other's needs in a sensible and clear way. Just going to move it on. There we go. Helen, would you like to take over?
So many thoughts that are pinging as Sue's talking, so I'm really keen that we have a discussion. But just before we do, I want to quickly go over again. We put this into AI. I'm not saying that it is perfect all the time, but it created this grid of the possible barriers that people might come across. So I'm going to really quickly go through them, who that might affect, that barrier, and then the impact that that could have. So we've already talked about time and life pressures. Not everybody works 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, including Lady. Shift workers. There might be parents where you've got caring responsibilities. So, the impact of that might be that there's an inconsistent attendance. So this idea that, you don't have to be every single week, or they might withdraw entirely. It might be a social or confidence barrier. So people who are quite introvert, they don't particularly want to share too much. They're socially anxious around people. That idea of being vulnerable with each other is huge. So again, that might limit participation, or as we've said, make them feel like their voice isn't heard. We have issues of neurodivergency across our congregations where, thinking styles differ massively. Some people might find a small group really overwhelming, confusing, and they might disengage. In terms of faith journey, there might be lots of things that people are grappling with, and if their thinking doesn't fit what they perceive to be the rest of that group, it's hard to feel like you're the only one. It's not just new or exploring Christians, it might be people who've gone through an element of sort of rethinking their faith, and there might be a fear of them asking that question, fear that they're excluded. So openness, honesty, transparency, I think, and that we're all in it together. are is absolutely key. Culture, language, we've discussed, going to people's houses. It might be that we have non-native English speakers. So that lack of sense of belonging, might be there, that they're not understood. Accessibility from a physical point of view, so it might be a disability or a chronic illness, inability to physically engage, or it could be a digital or financial issue, so low income. It might be a hidden barrier that we don't actually see, that there is something that's stopping them. So I just thought I'd do that as an overview of all of the different ways that people might not feel included. And I love what Sue said. The key is about what is the need. We start with that. What is their need and what do they want to get out of this? And then, creating a space where that need is fulfilled should really engage people and make them want to come, if all of those barriers, as far as possible, are taken down. So I think, what have we got next, Sue? Is it a scenario? Yes, we have. We're going to get to hear from you, hopefully. Your thoughts, if you want to, either spoken or in the chat, or if not, just something for you to think about internally. Let's think about a small group that meets every week on a Thursday evening in the church warden's home. This is a sort of, a made-up scenario. This group start with coffee and biscuits, and they do some small talk, and then they've got a Bible study booklet that they use, and it's got questions, and they answer them, and they share verbally. The attendance might be inconsistent. Not very many new people. Newer people rarely return, sorry. So it might be that new people don't return. Discussions are dominated by a few voices. That's a scenario. So if we could think about that and maybe get your feedback. What might make that particular group feel inaccessible? Where are the different elements that might be the case? Who might feel excluded? Why might that be the case? And let's suggest some small changes that could improve that. So I think if we
we're going to
that.
pause the video. So if you're watching online, let's please pause it and have a think about that. Thank you.
So we'll now just cover a little bit on marketing your small group. If we could just have the next slide, please, Sue, after we've had that reflection discussion. So as we've said, it's about really clearly establishing the expectations and purposes behind the small group. So it is often that word of mouth, personal invitation could be the in that somebody needs. They may read something anywhere but not feel it's for them. But if that reassurance is needed, maybe a personal invitation. With the caveat that obviously we don't want that to feel like somebody else has been asked or not been asked, but I just think word of mouth is great. The idea that you could share stories or testimonies from what has happened within that group. So people sharing the benefits that they have found from attending a small group might be a way to encourage somebody else to attend. Their personal experience, their lived experience might be really powerful. I've said about making the expectations very clear, reassuring people of the barriers that we've tried to break down as much as possible. Sometimes social media might be the one way that people come across your small group as something quite visual to entice people in, but equally maybe that it's written down in something on a diary or a notice sheet. And again, that culture of try, but you don't have to return. If it's not for you, that's fine. If you can only come once or twice, it's absolutely fine to be able to, go away. So just hopefully some marketing and communication advice there to really help the people in your congregations or the people on the fringes of that to engage in your small group at whatever point. And then, as we've just been talking about leading small groups, it can be a real skill, and there might be a space for an intentional training on that. But I think when we consider reminding the group behind why it exists, I think that is a good leadership skill to be able to go back and be very open about what it is we're trying to achieve. Ask questions which help you to understand what their needs are, if it's being met or not, where are people at, what do they need from the group? Empowering individuals to give you that honest feedback, what's going well and what isn't, I think can be really powerful. Encouraging spiritual practices which are right for that group at that time, not just what is expected. So Sue mentioned earlier around praying aloud. If for that group silence is much more comfortable, then that's right, that's okay. So just being explicit, I think, about what spiritual practices are right. Showing your own vulnerability as a leader. It may not be that a posture of being the expert in the room is helpful. It may be that sharing your need for learning in an area will really allow others in the space to understand that too. Relationships are key, as we've said. There may be clashes, there may be differences, and a good group leader will be able to hold those relationships well. And just to be explicit, as I say, about the lack of expectation. Put people at ease. Don't force them to do anything they don't want to. Don't assume anything. So they're just some sort of headline top tips. But as we've established, leading a small group can be different. I quite like the idea of facilitation. Just being the host or the facilitator of a conversation, not necessarily the leader with all the answers.
So we're coming to the end of the video part of it. So we'd like to it's okay again, technology, doing two things at once. So we've got some resources that we'd love to share with you. These are we've got Belonging Without Barriers, which is a book that is, for me, it came out very recently. It's about £15, unfortunately, but it's BRF Resources, and they've pulled a blinder on this one. If you are looking to find out, to broaden your knowledge about accessibility and different people's needs and how to fulfill them, what the answers are, this book has it. It has a very good chapter on, or part of the book about disability theology, which is the things of how we hold a group. And a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about is the attitude in which we come to a group, and that is brought in with our theology and how we approach the Bible in that way. And then there is different chapters on different needs and different differences. So learning disabilities, neurodivergence, age-related discipleship, all sorts of things in this book. There's another book called God Belongers, which is for people engage with the church and how we encourage them. It's a really, again, another practical book about small groups and how we encourage them. Enabling All, we have lots of information online about differences, and we have the Enabling All Awards, which is just a way of three needs that you have in your church. If you can find solutions, or we can find solutions together, I'm involved in the process. We can work out actions to those things. 3 actions and you get an award. I also just quickly need to mention that all churches in Lichfield Diocese and actually in the Southern Province can apply for up to £5,000 of money that supports a change in your church that's to do with accessibility, as long as it connects with the people and communicates with the people in the need, does an accessibility audit, and that you haven't got loads of money in the bank, and it's a short-term project that can make long-term change. There is on offer at the moment between £1,000 and £5,000 available. Get in touch with me to apply for it. Helen, what would you like to add before we stop the recording?
I think just to build those relationships and understand the people in your congregations. I wish there was one way of ensuring that all people who come on a Sunday attend a separate group. Might not be the case. It's just about making those relationships and having another disciple walk alongside you, and just to support each other in your discipleship. It might just be that that's 2 other people, so that can be a small group too.
Thank you. Just stopping the recording if it lets me. There we go.